Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for coming here. I want to just quickly thank the Meals on Wheels of Lancaster for allowing United Way to host this space. They've been important during this pandemic in making sure that our seniors are not forgotten, that high-risk population doesn't have to leave if they don't need to go to grocery stores or other places where they could be at risk. It's been a valuable thing. I previously was director here, and it's been great to see them flourish. My name is Kevin Ressler. I'm the president and CEO of United Way of Lancaster, and we're glad to host this press conference of the governors on an important issue around eviction and the concerns that we're seeing in the community as the shutdown and pandemic continue to wreak havoc. As I often say, every solution brings new challenges, and I'm grateful for the government officials who are meeting that head on and saying, let us solve not just today's problem, but tomorrow's problem as well. So wanted to thank Governor and those who have been a part of that. I also just wanted to mention really briefly what we've been able to do here in Lancaster has been successful because of the way in which we put the community first, and that we see that solutions don't need to be partisan, don't need a winner from one organization to another, that when the person in need wins, we all win. We know that when you have a strong foundation, then the entire structure can stand. And so let's make sure that we think about how we find those populations who are at most risk of losing everything or seeing one domino tumble into another domino, and ensuring that they have a strong foundation so that we all in the community, bottom on up, are able to live in a strong structure. So best wishes to those teachers beginning this week who start with the little ones, and those who are working in the CCRCs and retirement communities, keeping our elders safe, and everyone in between. Thank you all for the work that you do, whatever that work is. Thank you all for the community members that you are, however you show up in community. Remember that there is always someone else in front of you, and that there's always something you can do to make their burden lighter. Whether that's volunteering or donating for a nonprofit, attending church, or getting involved in your civic institutions. Thank you for that work. Here in Lancaster, we see that from our funders like High Foundation and the High companies who owned hotels, who opened those hotels up for the homeless individuals and in-kind donations, and gave tens of thousands of dollars for us to start our eviction prevention network here, making sure that individuals who were at risk could get their rent or their mortgage paid. But the solution needs to be bigger, and that's what you'll hear about today, and we're excited to be a part of that conversation, is that we can provide solutions statewide that make sure that we all thrive. So I would like to, at this moment, with one more thank you and welcome Governor Tom Wolf.
So thank you very much, Kevin. I really appreciate that warm welcome. It's good to be in Lancaster. As some of you know, I claim to be half Lancastrian. My mother was born in Lancaster County. And when people from Lancaster County ask me where she was born, I say Columbia. And a lot of people say, well, I'm not sure that's Lancaster County. So I've checked. It is Lancaster County, so it's great to be home, semi-home.
Welcome home.
Thank you. And I also want to welcome Bryce Moretsky from PHFA. Thank you for being here. Senator Carney and Representative Kenyatta. Thank you both for being here, and thank you for joining me today. This is an important thing that we're talking about, evictions. As everybody knows, COVID-19 has created a lot of hardships. For some Pennsylvanians, that has extended to job loss and real financial hardship. And as a result, in part of that, many people are also facing the loss of a home or an apartment. And there's absolutely no way that any Pennsylvanian under any circumstance should struggle for housing, for shelter. And so I have asked the General Assembly to pass legislation to place a moratorium on evictions and foreclosures, and to amend the state's assistance program and Bryce will talk a little more about that, so that it provides financial relief as intended, and also administrative help. Since then, since I made that request last week and a half ago, the Centers for Disease Control has imposed a nationwide eviction ban that will help some renters. But here's the problem: it doesn't protect all renters, just some. It doesn't stop mortgage foreclosures at all. And it doesn't assist landlords who are struggling to pay their mortgages and pay their taxes. So it doesn't really address these issues. So I'm continuing to ask the General Assembly of Pennsylvania to act because our Commonwealth, so many people in our Commonwealth are facing an eviction cliff. The U.S. Census Bureau estimates that nearly 17% of renters in Pennsylvania, and that's 400,000 households, could not afford to pay their rent in July. It's 400,000. Many of these households have been accruing past due rent even during the eviction moratorium, because as you know, the eviction moratorium didn't say you don't have to pay the rent ever. It says there's a moratorium on paying it, but you are accruing past due rent. And so when the moratorium is lifted in Pennsylvania, when that happens, whether it's by the CDC suspension, which goes through the end of December 27th, I think, or the Pennsylvania one, there are a lot of people who are going to be owing back rent. And that's several months of rent at a time when cash flow is going to be a real problem. So the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency CARES Rent Relief Program was created to help prevent this eviction cliff by providing rent assistance. Unfortunately, there's some problems with that. Again, Bryce is going to talk about that. One of them is that the cap on this is set at $750, which is not going to help a lot of people, just even here in Lancaster County. And that's far below the rent in many areas of the Commonwealth. And that has caused a lot of landlords just to say, we're not going to participate. The program also requires verification steps that have delayed application processing and the availability of assistance. It requires renters, for example, to be behind by at least a month. So some folks are saying that's actually not an appropriate thing. We need to change that so that people can get assistance as soon as they are aware that they need it. We don't need them to wait a month to be aware of that. And we don't want them to accrue debt for that extra month. We also want to assist landlords with recouping the balance of owed payments. So repairing this program through administrative work and through dollars and through an accelerate, an improvement on the rent and foreclosure moratorium that I'd like to have the General Assembly pass. We want to act here in Pennsylvania. So we need the General Assembly to act. We need to assist Pennsylvanians with essential utilities like heat and water. We're coming into the fall months, into winter, cold weather, and this is the last time we want utilities to be shut off. So I'm proposing $100 million to help out of the CARES Act funding to help with the low-income home energy assistance program. That's the LIHEAP program, and a new emergency wastewater and freshwater drinking water program, as well as adding another $100 million in addition to that to the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency CARES Rent Relief Program, so that we can help more Pennsylvanians who are in need and who are looking toward the real devastating problem of being evicted from their homes. House and Senate Democrats have been working on this, and we need the entire General Assembly to work on this. I'm committed to working with the General Assembly to ensure every Pennsylvania has housing throughout this pandemic, however long it exists. And I think we all need to work together to make sure that Pennsylvanians are not evicted from their homes. So thank you for hearing me out. And now I'm going to turn this over to Bryce Moretsky, who's Director of Planning and Policy at the Department. Actually, you're not. You're at the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency, right? PHFA. Bryce.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you here today to speak about the need to promote housing stability. It's great to see the support shown here by others for this cause. Of course, Governor Wolf, Senator Carney, Representative Kenyatta, and Kevin Ressler. On behalf of PHFA's Executive Director and CEO, Robin Weissman, it really is an honor and a pleasure to be here to talk to you about this important topic. We are here because we are extremely concerned about housing stability for thousands of Pennsylvanians hurt financially by COVID-19. Our current pandemic has made it clear that a large number of our neighbors live on the edge. So when financial hardships strike, the threat of homelessness is very real. As Matthew Desmond, the author of Evicted, wrote in a recent New York Times op-ed, our efforts to defeat COVID and recover from the economic damage it has wrought will be deeply compromised if we fail to help families keep their home. Homelessness, for many, begins with a downward spiral, and it can take people years to recover. When people are homeless, holding down a job is nearly impossible. Families get torn apart, get ripped from their core and their roots. So clearly, if we can help people during this downturn in the economy so that they can maintain their housing, we save those families from hardship and we help communities remain strong. Homelessness and evictions are not good for Pennsylvania's recovery. The need for housing, for rent and mortgage assistance, is in real interest in our housing security. More than 70% of extremely low income renters in Pennsylvania pay more than 30% of their income on a monthly basis on housing. As Governor Wolf mentioned, 400,000 residents of Pennsylvania could not make their payments and continue to not be able to make their payments. This means that money being spent on housing isn't available for food, medicine, and other important daily needs. The pandemic has only exacerbated what we know has been a housing crisis and has primarily impacted, especially impacted, the low income and most poor in our communities. Many households are barely able to afford their rent and mortgage payments prior to COVID-19 and have not been able to, with loss of jobs, loss of wages, having to take care of children, parents, other family members during the crisis, have not been able to have the income to be able to make their rent payments. And yet they have prioritized their rent because housing is so critical to keeping stable, being able to recover. With the loss of the additional pandemic unemployment assistance and continued economic recession, again, roughly 400,000 Pennsylvanians will be unable to continue to make their rent payments into August and September. Why are we here today? The goal in May was to start getting the money flowing so it could do some good. The legislature moved quickly with Governor Wolf to get the CARES legislation passed. The Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency worked incredibly hard to get two statewide programs up and running in 4 short weeks, the Rent Relief Program and the Pandemic Mortgage Assistance Program. We now have the benefit of having operated the CARES relief programs for over 2 months. During that time, we've learned the ways these programs can be improved upon to better help more people and to make sure we put to work as much of those federal dollars as possible. With some key changes to both CARES programs for renters and homeowners, we can help more people stay in their homes and assist Pennsylvania's economy. The recommended improvements that we think would really help this program, and we've talked to many people. We feel that there's a consensus about improving this program. Legislature, advocates, community groups that are helping to administer it. The changes we seek are to increase the assistance cap. The current rental assistance cap should be moved from the $750 a month up to 130% of the fair market rent for a 2-bedroom apartment in each county. That would significantly increase the rental assistance available on a monthly basis. Just here in Lancaster County, that would mean going up to a maximum of over $1,300 a month from the current rent of maximum rent of assistance of $750 a month. This would address a major program barrier and allow for significantly greater assistance in higher cost areas. It will also encourage more landlords to participate in the program. One of the biggest barriers of the program is the program requires both a landlord and a tenant to sort of coordinate and collaborate on an application. And we've had about twice as many tenants apply than we have landlords. And so we think increasing, and one of the major barriers has been the low level of rental assistance. The next recommendation is extending the current application deadline to October 30th from the current deadline of September 30th. September 30th is 3 weeks away. We really think that another 30 days to get applications in would help more people, would help drive out with these other changes, would help drive out those additional dollars into the communities and into people who need it most. We would also ask that the legislature remove the requirement that a rent or mortgage payment be at least 30 days delinquent in order for the applicant to be eligible to receive CARES assistance. Making this change will remove the current penalty that exists for renters and homeowners who have prioritized housing payments while letting other critical bills fall behind, whether that's a health care bill, a medical bill, buying a car, repairing a car, paying child care, all sorts of other bills, even food. They really have prioritized, and so they're not eligible because they're not 30 days. Next, we recommend that renters be allowed to work out repayment plans with their landlords for any balance due above and beyond the CARES assistance being provided. We should allow borrowers to enter into a loss mitigation plan for any unpaid mortgage amount. Finally, PHFA should be authorized to retain up to 5% of the CARES funds to be used for administrative costs. And these administrative costs are really, we have 67 county organizations that are administering the rent relief program. Those dollars would all be going out to them to help them. There's hundreds and hundreds of staff across the Commonwealth working for organizations that are processing applications, reviewing applications. These administrative funds will help maintain their salaries and help make sure that they can continue to operate the program. Here in Lancaster County, the organization is the Redevelopment Authority of Lancaster County. If we're going to help people through this pandemic, we need to address their housing first. Once they have stable housing, then their other life needs can be addressed. But without stable housing, people's lives will be in jeopardy, and they can be negatively impacted for years to come, and the Pennsylvania economy will suffer. Let's get this done and make a positive difference. Thank you. I now turn it over to Senator Carney.
I like this mask, but it is a little warm. Thank you, Bryce. I am Senator Tim Carney. I represent the 26th District in parts of Delaware and Chester counties. I want to start by making one thing clear. Housing is a human right. Every person deserves a decent, affordable, and a safe place to live. We were facing a crisis of housing insecurity before this pandemic hit, and like so many things, the coronavirus has worsened what's already broken. Our country and our Commonwealth are facing historic levels of unemployment. Renters and homeowners are struggling to keep food on the table and a roof over their heads. As social distancing continues, staying safe means having a home to stay in. Ensuring housing stability is not just a moral imperative, but it's also a public health necessity. That's why we in the General Assembly must act now to keep people in their homes. I agree with what the governor is saying. It's in our hands right now. We already have legislation which is moving now, hopefully moving. But in the same way that this program requires homeowners and landlords to work together, this would require Republicans and Democrats to work together in the legislature to move this forward. This starts with an eviction and foreclosure moratorium that keeps Pennsylvania families off the streets. We also need to fix problems with the Commonwealth's rent and mortgage relief program, like the unemployment verification requirements that forces people to wait even longer for an overwhelmed system. Finally, we need to invest an additional $100 million in relief programs so that renters and homeowners get the financial support they need to make it through this pandemic. The first of the month was a week ago. Families across Pennsylvania are facing an emergency at their doorsteps, and they are waiting for us in the General Assembly to do our jobs. So let's get to work. It's now my distinct pleasure to introduce my friend from North Philadelphia, Representative MalcolmKenyatta.
Good morning. My name is State Representative MalcolmKenyatta. And while I'm always happy to be in Lancaster, I really wish we weren't here having this press conference. This conversation that we're having right now is what frustrates so many people about politics. Keeping people in their homes during a pandemic is not political. This should be bipartisan. This should be easy. We have 400,000 Pennsylvanians that are at risk. Bryce went through in some detail some of the changes that are necessary in the rental assistance program, in the PMAP program to assist with mortgages. And I will tell you, I'm new to the General Assembly, but when you have a crisis, you would have thought last week when we were in session in the House, we would have been addressing this crisis. We were renaming bridges last week in the House. Renaming bridges while there is a crisis in terms of keeping people in their homes. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. The governor, through his leadership from the beginning of this pandemic, has used every tool in his bailiwick, and I know his staff was looking at every tool that they could use to extend this. But the reality is the statute is clear, and the General Assembly has to act. We have to act quickly. We should act this week. We should have acted last week. But the second best time to last week is right now. We need to get this done. This is not political for me. This is personal. Growing up, I know what it means for my mom to sit us all down and say we're not going to be able to stay where we are anymore. And for young people, our kids especially, who may be in school, might be in a hybrid model, might be doing school from home, that stability is critical to their development. And to put them in a position where they're not sure whether or not they're going to be able to stay in their home or their apartment, wherever they're living, is unnecessary instability at a time when we're all feeling so unstable. So much of what happens in our politics or what doesn't happen comes down to one word: courage. Courage. The governor's shown tremendous courage throughout this pandemic. Save lives, keep people safe. Now it's up to the Republican leadership in the General Assembly to show courage, get this done, extend this moratorium, and look at the whole list of bills that the House Democratic Housing Working Group has put out. A list of 10 bills. You can go look them up right now. 10 bills that not only address the current crisis, but look at some of the issues that Senator Carney talked about more broadly that exist in our housing here in Pennsylvania. And so let's get to work, because I know that the governor is ready to sign a bill, and I hope that we send him a bill to his desk immediately to sign and give Pennsylvanians the relief that they deserve. And so with that, I know the governor might take a couple of questions.
Thank you very much, Malcolm. Now, all of us would be happy to take questions. Yes.
Governor, this is actually on a different issue. You just had an order come out that you are calling for an increase in capacity for restaurants starting September 21st to 50%. Can you explain what went into that decision?
Yeah, I think the move to 25% back last month was an attempt to again flatten the curve in Pennsylvania. We were starting to see a troubling rise. We've been doing pretty well, and we're starting to see a troubling rise. And the CDC and the federal government folks were recommending that we do this, and that would actually make a difference, and they were right. I think it's why Dr. Birx was in Pennsylvania last week and said Pennsylvania's doing a good job. We're doing what she and her associates say we ought to be doing, and that was part of it. Now I think we're at a point where we are ready to lift that partially. It's going to 50%. We're still saying we want you to hold alcohol sales and shut them down at 10. And so I think this is something that Pennsylvania has done a nice job so far, and we need to continue. But I think we're in a position to recognize the hardship that this has caused for restaurants, and at the same time continue to do what we can do to keep people safe.
Well, if I'll ask another question. How concerned are you about the unemployment rate in Pennsylvania at 13.7? It's among the, I think, third highest in the country when the federal level went down to 8.4. And what do you attribute it to, and what could be done?
Yeah, we're looking at that. The Pennsylvania's unemployment rate was above the national average, even down when we were at, 4%. The country was under 4%. The average. So that's troubling. Part of that is you got to be careful about the statistic. As more people look for jobs, your unemployment rate is going to rise because the denominator rises. You have more people actually actively looking for work, and that's a good thing. And I think one of the things that was sort of hopeful about this, I mean, it's almost a silver lining. Obviously, I'd like to have a very low unemployment rate, but I'd like to have a lot of people think Pennsylvania is a place where they have an opportunity to get a good job. So I think we have to be a little careful with the statistic. The concern is that one of the areas that has been affected even before the pandemic was manufacturing, and that's big in Pennsylvania. The trade war, I think Pennsylvania has a big export component in its economy, and to the extent the international trade was affected by the scare and now by the pandemic, that's also an issue. But anyway, it's something that I am concerned about. I think we need to do everything we can to make sure Pennsylvania is a place where people have job opportunities, not where we're losing jobs. Yeah.
I just want to follow up on Barbara had mentioned about the restaurant guidelines. Yeah. Again, you kind of mentioned it, but is September 21st, was there planned, or is this, I guess, is there a magic reason for September 21st?
Well, there's no magic. I think it looks like that's a reasonable date, and we've been obviously talking with the restaurant owners. I have all along been concerned about the economic impact that this has had on the restaurant and bar business, and which is why I've asked for hundreds of millions of dollars to be directed toward that industry, because I know they've been particularly hard hit. The challenge in the past has always been, we have a choice of sort of ignoring reality, the reality of that virus that is out there, and looking for places where people get together and congregate and talk to each other and exchange germs. Ignore that, or have a devastate this really important segment of our economy. And it's just two very bad choices. And I chose not to ignore reality in terms of recognizing that bars and restaurants can be places that are where that virus can actually do some bad things. But I also recognize that we have a financial obligation to that industry to say, okay, we're asking you to bear a really tough burden here in terms of addressing this. It's not your fault. It's a virus. The virus says, your places I like. That's not your fault. And so we need to make sure that we're doing something financially, which I've been trying to do throughout. I think I'm going to continue to do that. I continue to support the Restaurants Act in the U.S. Congress. But I think this is also something that will be a help to the industry.
Follow up just on the renters and the eviction moratorium. Is there any legislation in there that would help folks who have already gotten an eviction notice on September 1st to help them maybe retroactively keep them in their apartments or anything like that?
Yeah, well, I mean, the hope is that we act quickly enough, as Representative Kenyatta said, that we act quickly enough so that we can address that. I don't think there's a landlord out there who wants to evict tenants if they're decent tenants, and the only thing wrong is that they can't afford to pay the rent. If we can say, no, there's help coming here, and you as a landlord are going to be helped, I'm not sure why that landlord would want to act too precipitously here. I think the landlord might be willing and eager, actually, to say, yeah, this looks like, you're going to be able to do this. Let's work this out.
I want to ask just one more follow-up question. I guess with that, there's municipalities here in Lancaster County like Ephrata who was not fall under the jurisdiction of the PUC, and they have their own, and they've started to send out rent eviction notices and so on and so forth. Is there anything that you can help municipalities like that who have their own utilities?
I don't think they're sending out eviction notices. They're sending out shut-off notices, right, for the utility. And that's another thing, thanks for bringing that up, that's part of this package. I think, and I'm calling for the General Assembly to put, again, CARES Act money, $100 million to the PUC to help with people like that. Now, you're right, Ephrata has its own, they're not actually regulated by the Public Utilities Commission, so that would be something that we'd have to make a special effort there. But whether you're Ephrata, a public or a private public utility, I don't think you want to cut people off. I think you want to get paid. We want to help with that, and I think that helps both the public utility and it helps the people who are being threatened, being shut off. Yeah.
I'll wait so you can hear me. I just want to address the moratorium and
Right.
those Republican lawmakers and even some of their spokespeople who continue to say that this is an agenda push and that we should be putting people back to work. I would just like you to address them and what they've said about that these relief programs being an agenda push.
Yeah, I don't know what agenda they're pushing, except, again, Representative Kenyatta and Senator Carney said this. We're actually trying to do what I think government is meant to do, and that is help people through a real crisis here. We want to take barriers away from people who can actually make a real contribution to our economy, our society, our communities, our schools. And that's all I'm trying to do here. Again, I'm not sure why this is a Republican or a Democratic thing. Everybody should want people to be able to stay in their homes. Everybody should want people who have taken a risk and taken a mortgage out to buy a place and then rent it out, landlords. They ought to be protected too. This is not something that should be partisan. So if there's an agenda, I'm not aware of it, and it seems to me to be a pretty bipartisan issue.
I just want to ask a follow-up. Do you think that sort of language, when that's pushed, saying that this is an agenda, is that destructive to people who actually want to pass policy that could help people? Is that damaging to the public who hears that?
I guess it's part of the game, but I think when we're on the right side here, and I'm not sure why anybody would call it anything that has any pejorative connotation. We're trying to help people. Tenants, mortgage holders, landlords. I'm not sure where the agenda is. Yeah, we have an agenda. I would say fairly that all of us really want to help Pennsylvania. Yeah.
Lancaster County has used local CARES Act money to sort of top up the rental relief program. Do you think that's a good idea? Would you support paying counties that do that back with the state money should your legislation move forward?
I hadn't thought of that. I mean, I wasn't aware. I'd have to know what Lancaster did. Presumably it was to address the $750 cap, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I'd certainly be willing to take a look at that. Anything else? Okay.
Or maybe worked with them behind the scenes in coming up with some of this legislation. Do you have a response to that?
Yeah, I was thinking, I got that last week, and I have each one of the Republican leaders on my speed dial. I'm sure they have me on theirs. I have a legislative affairs group that has maybe 7 people who spend all their time, probably more time than you guys would like, reaching out to legislators on both sides of the aisle. Obviously, the legislators have subpoena power, so they're talking with our agencies all the time. The budget office is in constant conversation about the budget that's coming up. And since Republicans are in the majority, those are mostly Republicans they're speaking with. So I'm not sure where that comes from. We're talking all the time. My chief of staff is multiple times a day. So yeah, and again, there should be no surprises here. The moratorium on evictions that I did, or that the court did, expired in May. I extended it, but it was extended through the end of July. I was able to extend it again through the end of August, but and the one that the CDC has put into place expires December 27th. So there shouldn't be any surprises here. Yeah. Sure. Wait till the.
Sorry, I have a soft voice too. I think everyone, you got to meet with Biden
Yes,
the other day.
Yesterday.
And we just wondering what you talked about and how you feel about that visit.
Well, he has been really good to Pennsylvania when he was a senator and when he was vice president. And I got to know him. I mean, I've been in politics for 5.5 years, but he was one of the first people. He actually called me when I won to congratulate me, and a number of times he's been very helpful to me, just even making my way through the White House when I was lost the first time I visited, and he's just a decent human being, and I have always thought very highly of him, and yesterday just reinforced that. So it was pleasantly, how are you doing? How are things going? And Pennsylvania looks very good at this point to him, so I mean I took credit for that. So I think we just had a nice conversation. Yeah.
Slightly broader question. There's increasing concern, number one, about the fiscal plight that states and local governments are
Right.
going to find themselves in,
Yeah.
and it looks less and less likely that the federal government is going to address that. Could you talk about how that looks from the point of view of Pennsylvania?
Yeah, okay, first of all, I hope you're wrong. I hope the federal government does actually address this. I know time is running out, but the hope is that, I mean, even the Republicans in the Senate have come up with a $1 trillion, imagine that, $1 trillion as the low the bid, and the Democrats in the House have come with $3 trillion alternative, so somewhere between there would be wonderful. $3 trillion would be the best, but somewhere between 1 and 3 trillion would be great. So I'm not sure what the holdup is, and the hope is that they actually do that. Absent that, you're right. States all across the country, Republican and Democratic states, counties all across the state and every other state, Republican and Democratic, local municipalities, Democrat and Republican, they're all going to be struggling, and it's hundreds of billions of dollars that are going to be taken out of the economy at a time when that kind of money should not be taken. But think about the multiplier effect. But then think of the social services, the human services, and the waste. We're not going to be able to do the things to help people in the highest time of need that they face, certainly, I think, in my lifetime. So I think we really need the federal government. This is something that the states can't do. If we're forced to follow our balanced budget constitutional provision, that is going to hurt a lot of people in Pennsylvania.
You mentioned social services, but would education, health?
All those things, everything. The health, education, unemployment compensation. I mean, there's so many things that we rely on the federal government to help us with. We need to make sure that Congress does the right thing and makes the federal government the partner it really ought to be in addressing this pandemic.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everybody. Thanks. Nice hat.